Toyota of New Orleans, part of the Premier family, and it's a premier dealership in every sense of the word. 13150 I-10 Service Road in New Orleans. He's just off of Bullard with tremendous deals on awesome vehicles. Toyota of New Orleans. Check them out anytime. Open till 9 this evening and 8 every other night during the week at Toyota of New Orleans. And a pleasant good evening to you, Ken Trahan. Welcome back for a third year of SportsNOLA TV here on WHNO Channel 20. We'll be breaking it down from the Saints to LSU to Tulane to prep football to the Pelicans and beyond. If it's local sports, we've got it here on SportsNOLA TV in conjunction with sportsNOLA.com. And to break it down again this year, we're very blessed to have back for a third year my good friend, my brother in the Lord, and a guy that's done a good job for us for 2 years, so we throw another bone for a third year, and he's going to chomp on it. Former Saints receiver Torrance Small. Torrance, good to have you.
Hey, man, glad to be back. Hey, thank you all for out there for supporting us. 3 years and running. Thank you.
Wow, he was mild. God, it's never without an opinion. The gentle one, as it were. Of course, sports writer supreme for sportsNOLA.com and many other entities, and longtime journalist in the New Orleans market and beyond via Indiana, Brian Allee-Walsh. Brian, good to have you with us.
Kenny, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to be sandwiched between these two guys. I'm glad we have at least one Hall of Famer on this dais. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to have
Thank
you
you very much. We didn't want to break that story yet, but appreciate you mentioning it nonetheless. And we're very fortunate this year to have a good and great friend, a guy I've had a great relationship with many years, dating back to his playing days with the New Orleans Saints, and boy was he good. Part of the best linebacking crew ever in NFL history. Of course, he ended up becoming a Pro Football Hall of Famer for his exploits on the field. He's going to give some Hall of Fame opinions on this show this year. Please welcome number 57, Rickey Jackson. Rickey, good to have you with us.
Good, Kenny, thanks.
Wow.
I'm glad to be here this year, and I'll tell you what, man, dealing with these guys up here, I know I'm going to have a whole lot of fun, so I'm glad to be here.
We are going to have some fun. We're going to enjoy this. Look, it's a game. It's the business of games. It's why we're in it, to talk about the games and enjoy ourselves while injecting some professional opinions and a listening response in the process. That's what we'll do. And we'll get it started by talking about your New Orleans Saints, who embark on the 2013 season this weekend against the Falcons. And we'll do so next when we return in just a moment from Toyota New Orleans, a premier dealership right here on WHNO Channel 20. If you're good enough to make the team, you'll make the team regardless of where you might have been drafted, not drafted, how much money you make. It's all about earning your way onto a football team. That's been the case during the Sean Payton regime of the New Orleans Saints, and that is certainly the case this year with 10 rookies making the team. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA TV from Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. Brian, as you look at that stat, it's pretty intriguing because it's not just 10 rookies making the initial roster, which obviously could change at any time, but it's 6 free agent rookies and only 4 draft picks. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it speaks to the draft, but it also speaks to the pro and college personnel departments. They've done a good job of uncovering players that they feel can play at this level. And the thing that has been constant throughout Sean Payton's tenure in New Orleans is that they want to get, one, the right 53 every time they enter a season, and 2, like you said, Kenny, it doesn't matter how you arrived here, it's what you do when you get here. Rickey and Torrance know that as well as anybody, is that these guys prove that they belong, and that's what it's all about, getting the right players to enter the regular season.
Torrance, this has been a familiar theme with Coach Payton again. He does not discriminate based upon the investment that the team has made in you.
No. One thing about Sean Payton, he's going to put the best 53 out there. He's going to put the guy that best fits the team, not so much as the best talent, but what best fits the team at that position. Now, I remember coming in, and I was a drafted guy. And I thought, being drafted, I made the team. But they told me, no, you have to make the team as well. So a lot of guys come in here with the wrong impression that they think they're on the team because they got drafted. No, you have other guys that's coming out, they're free agents, and they're working just as hard as you trying to make that team.
Rickey, I guess the biggest question about this would be, whether or not the fact that 10 rookies made the team tells you maybe you're not good enough in some places that many young guys can make your team?
Well, you know, you got a lot of veterans. I mean, a lot of them got hurt this year, and I mean, when everybody get hurt like that, you got to get some young talent in, and those guys now being young, big, fast, and strong, you need a lot of speed out there now, and a lot of the old guys kind of slowing down. So, coach feel like those guys can play special team and offensive defense, so you got to keep those guys.
Roster will change year to year. Let's take a look at some changes on offense from 2012 through 2013, and let's take a look at some of these changes that they've made. Brian, first of all, you look at the key additions category. Luke McCown has distinguished himself quite well. Ben Watson looks like he'll be a significant upgrade. Of course, from a rookie perspective, Stills looks like he'll be an immediate contributor. Armstead down the road. Bushrod, certainly the biggest loss. Chase Daniel replaceable, Chris Ivory replaceable, David Thomas replaceable. Your thoughts about these offensive changes?
Yeah, I think obviously they've gotten younger, and that's a good thing. But that window of opportunity for this team to go back and win another Super Bowl, the question is are you going to do that with 20% of your roster is essentially first-year guys? And I don't care about drafted, undrafted. It's first-year guys. And some of these guys are going to have to contribute right away, Kenny.
Stills is a guy you've watched in the preseason as a wide receiver, and you watched that position closely, Torrance. Your impressions of Stills and what impact he may make?
Oh, I love Stills. I loved him when he was at Oklahoma. I think this guy, he reminds me a little bit of Joe Horn. He has a little bit of that attitude. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can do a lot of different things for the team. And I think that's going to be great because if you have somebody to go down, he can go outside, give you speed, and he also can come in the slot and replace more if something was to happen to him.
Rickey, you of course made a living rushing the passer, and that blind spot for the quarterback, Saints replaced Jermon Bushrod this year, and obviously that's a major concern. You've got Charles Brown there. From a pass rushing perspective, how important is that position, and do you think the Saints have filled their need at left tackle?
Well, I mean, you know, they're going with the best that they have, but I'll tell you what, I mean, anytime you got a quarterback like the Saints got, he's going to need time, and it's going to be vital that this year that these guys give him a lot of time because they got some good receivers, great tight end. They can get the ball to the running backs in the backfield. They just need a little time for the quarterback.
Let's take a look at some rankings as we look at the Sean Payton regime, which of course began in 2006, and we get a chance to go inside the numbers a little bit from the standpoint of this team and where they've ranked. And Brian, as you look at some of those numbers, obviously the offensive numbers, gaudy where the Saints are concerned, understandably so. That's been their calling card all along since Sean Payton came on board along with Drew Brees.
They've been able to keep their core of players, big skill players for the most part throughout Sean Payton's regime, and this is another season where they're going to have to do it. Kenny, real quick on just their roster. When you think about it, they've got 3 of their 5 receivers have never caught an NFL ball. Their 3 backups along the offensive line have a combined 1 start, and then as we pointed out before, you've got 3 outside linebackers, gentlemen, on their roster, and not one of them has played a down in the preseason. Kenny and I were talking about that. That's incredible.
Yeah, and those when you have a team made up this way, that's when your core guys, you talked about it, that's when your core guys have to step up and hold everything together until these guys can catch on to the schemes or the plays that want to be ran with this team. It's going to take some time, but that's when you depend on your core. That's what your veteran guys that Rick was talking about don't have many because we're trying to get younger, but those guys really have to step up.
Rickey, this offense is really good, but it's great when they run the football to complement what Drew Brees does in the passing game. How important is it for them to commit to the run more this year, to be able to have time of possession and create balance and create a diversion for the defense?
Well, I mean, you know, Coach Payton is a passing coach, you know. I mean, he want to get that ball in the receiver's hand and the tight end hands. He want to get down the field quick, fast, in a hurry. He like the screen plays and stuff like that. So he never been a coach that been just going to pound you with the run.
Yeah, but you know, Rick, to take off on Kenny's point just another second, is that, you know, they kept 5 running backs, and all of them are worthy of being on this roster. But I think what Sean Payton noticed in the year that he was away, Rickey, is that they did a very poor job of establishing a run. Now, I agree with you totally. Sean Payton is a pass-first, run-second guy. But you know what? You can finish out games, you can milk the clock, and you can move the chains by being able to run the football, and they did not do a good job of that last year.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, you know, I don't see the offensive line being that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you had the hogs up front or
Right.
you had somebody up front that's going to just blow guys out and stuff, and run the bike could be great, but we don't have those kind of bikes back there. You look at, we have scat bikes type guys, so we don't really have bikes that just pound and bike. So it's difficult just to get in an I formation and just pound you down here because we don't really have those bikes. You look at Scroll, you know, they're not those type of bikes.
Well, I think obviously Mark Ingram will be a large part of that component this year. Whether or not he becomes a legitimate #1 feature back in the NFL will largely determine whether the Saints, A, commit to the run, and B, have success running the football, because see, if he doesn't, they won't run it that much. Trust me. We'll take a time out here. We'll take a look inside the Saints defense when we return in just a moment from Toyota of New Orleans on SportsNOLA TV here on Channel 20. The Saints certainly hope that trend continues in season openers against division opponents. Of course, they're 0-6 all time in season openers against the Falcons, but they haven't played the Falcons since the mid-'80s in a season opener. And of course, most importantly, the Saints are 10-2 against the Falcons under Sean Payton. SportsNOLA TV continues from Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East, with great vehicles, great people, great deals. Come on by 9 o'clock this evening. We're open till, and of course 8 o'clock on other weeknights here at Toyota of New Orleans. The Saints defense, let's take a look at the changes, the additions and subtractions for 2013. And Brian, as we look at this list, it's a little bit more extensive. Of course, Victor Butler, Kenyon Coleman, scratch them both. Paris Harrelson most recently, Keenan Lewis, a key component. Then the draft picks, Kenny Vaccaro, John Jenkins figure prominently. The losses, Casillas, Ellis, McBride, Patrick. Okay, on the loss side, no losses. On the addition side, two guys who are already out of the mix. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, it's one reason why they kept 26 defensive players this year. You've got some big holes to fill, and as we pointed out in the previous segment, is that your three outside linebackers, which is all they kept on their 53-man roster, not one has played a down in the preseason, which may be unique. That's certainly maybe a first in the NFL. You know, they're asking a lot of young guys to contribute right away, Kenny, and we'll see. You know, they've got a new scheme, new defensive coordinator, and a lot of new faces up there. So there's a lot being asked of these guys early.
And it's not just rookies, Torrance. Of course you have rookies like Jenkins, who we saw, Kenny Vaccaro most prominently, but you got Akeem Hicks, who's a second-year player. You got Foster, who's a free agent player. So you got a lot of young guys that they're counting on, as Brian alludes to, and usually that's a learning curve, isn't it?
It's a learning curve. We talked about this last year, guys. We talked about the team, the scheme being better than the talent that we have. We're hoping that the scheme that has been brought to the team this year is better than the talent that we have to help these guys until we can get some of these younger guys to grow up in the game and learn a little bit more about the game where they can be more productive.
Rickey, specifically, you would know this, the 3-4 defense. You played it, and you play with the best group of linebackers in the history of the league here in New Orleans. Can this defense work in this day and age? Can it work here in New Orleans with this personnel that Rob Ryan has to work with?
Well, I mean, you know, because of how the secondary do. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, if the secondary can hold up, you know, the front seven, they'll get there. So that's going to be the key. If the secondary can cover, got a lot of man-to-man coverage you got to do out of that scheme. And if they can hold up covering the great receivers that they have now in the league, the Saints going to have a good defense. 3
linebackers on the outside, that's it, at least for now to open the season. That's not enough, obviously. Paris Harrelson, the guy you're familiar with, played for San Francisco where you also played. He can play. He was hurt last year. Certainly he'll be a good addition, but again, when you look at outside linebacker, you got a guy that missed all of last year in Harrelson, and you got 2 guys in Gollette and Martez Wilson who haven't played in the preseason. Would you be concerned about that position?
Well, the only thing I would be concerned about, all these guys injury prone. I mean, and that's the whole thing with me with football. I don't believe in a guy getting hurt, you know what I mean? I believe in, you know, you can't be in the tub and give me a whole lot of performance. You got to stay on the field, and that's the only thing these guys got to realize. You know, coach need them out there playing, so you got to protect yourself and play good hard-nosed football.
All right, speaking of injuries, Brian, let's take a look at a list of key injuries where the Saints are concerned. Obviously, they have quite a few of those, and as you look at those injuries, Brian, we know about Joe Morgan, unfortunate with Will Smith, injured reserve for Chamberlain, Butler, Colton we've talked about. and of course the guys that haven't played yet in Gillette and Wilson. Your thoughts on their injury situation? Is it severe? Is it modest? Is it something to expect? Is it something they can overcome?
Well, I'll tell you what, all those players on defense were guys that they were counting on. And we're not talking about just depth in many cases. These are starters that they brought in, 2 from Dallas and then their own. So, no, those are significant, and that's why these young guys have got to step it up.
Torrance, as you look at what they've added, their secondary has to be better. Keenan Lewis was a priority. Kenny Vaccaro was a priority. Just with those 2 guys, they've got to be better in the secondary.
In the secondary, I think we have got better. Now, but the one thing I still that we don't have is a pass rusher. We need somebody to dominate the front line, the pass rusher, to bring some pressure on the quarterback in order for these guys to be covered. I don't care how great of a cover guy you are, you can't cover a receiver, but only for so long.
And Ricky, it looks like they may have that guy in Cameron Jordan. He had a breakout season last year with 10 sacks, and he's just looked really good, not just in training camp, but in the preseason games. He has the bloodlines, of course, with a dad who played in the NFL. It looks like this kid may be ready to be that guy.
Yeah, dad had played tight end. He was great for Minnesota. Gave me a lot of hard balance. But I tell you what, man, the guy got a motor. I look at Cameron, and he just goes balls out all the time, and that's the great thing about him. He got a motor.
Yeah, I think, Brian, this is a guy, you got to have that one guy that people have to account for, that they have to double team, that they have to account for in the passing game, and I think he has to be that guy. I don't see anybody else. I know Gillette has speed, but he hasn't proven it on a long-term basis yet. It's got to be Jordan.
Yeah, and a guy we can't overlook is Akeem Hicks. I do like Akeem Hicks, and now I don't think he's the premier pass rusher that you're looking for to put that constant pressure on the quarterback, but I think he's a guy that at least cut the edge over there and put some pressure on the quarterback. Again, we're talking about Kenyon Coleman and Victor Butler, guys that they lost. Will Smith even at 31. He was going to hopefully bring some heat off the edge. So these are guys that younger players are going to have to step up. Here's what I liked in the preseason real quick. I did like the pressure that they brought. Now it's preseason, and I liked what they did against the run for the most part. I thought they were better, more physical against the run.
Yeah. Well, again, I hate to be beating this drum, guys.
Beat it.
But we have to be better at scheming than we are talent. Rob Ryan, we brought you in there. You changed the defense. We didn't give you much for his pass rusher, but they did try to help you out in the defensive back, as we alluded to earlier. We did help you out in the defensive back area, but we have to be able to scheme up front, give these teams some different looks, make them see something, and give them something else to put pressure on the quarterback in order to help out those defensive backs.
Ricky, you look at scheme, so much different than what we've seen. Greg Williams blitzed at all costs. Steve Spagnuolo was just the opposite. Looks like Ryan's kind of in between the two. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I tell you, the safety gonna help him out a lot. He got Malcolm Jenkins back there. He done learned a whole lot from, so that's gonna really help the whole secondary out. He's gonna be able to make some calls and put the secondary in the right spot. So I think that's gonna be the key this year, having a guy that's a young guy, but he still got a little experience back there. So I think that Jenkins gonna be the key to that secondary.
As history suggests, the Saints defense doesn't have to be great. It doesn't even have to be good. It just needs to be competent to give their offense enough at-bats to do the damage that it does on a regular basis. When we return, we'll take a trip around the NFL as SportsNOLA TV continues from Toyota of New Orleans in New Orleans East on WHNO. Our SportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening is one that you might be able to solve. Let's see how smart you are. How many members of the Saints' 53-man roster were not with the Saints when Sean Payton last coached a game in January of 2012? Remember the 49ers game? Was it A, 20, B, 25, C, 30, or D, 35? Bottom line is, it's a lot of guys that he has that are new from the last time he was here, and that's pretty much what you can expect. A new look Saints team in 2013. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA TV, from Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East with the best deals in town. Thanks to Troy Duhan and his outstanding staff at Premier for having us here this evening. We take a look around the NFL. Of course, we'll start with the NFC South because that's where the Saints reside. And as we look at the NFC South and we look at power rankings and what people are thinking, we see a lot of diverse opinions about this particular division. And as you look at ESPN, the magazine, check this out. They've got the Saints dead last at 6-10. The Saints are all over the map, anywhere from as low as 6-10 to as good as 11-5 that I've seen. And Brian, as you examine those numbers, first of all, I don't concur with ESPN, the magazine. I respect their opinions, but I don't concur with that, frankly. As you look at this NFC South, where do you see the Saints, first of all? And secondly, where do you see the other teams?
The only one I would agree with probably would be Atlanta. ESPN magazine 11-5. I think that's where they probably fit. The Saints are a 10-win team as far as I'm concerned. Now that's these young guys. Repeat it again. They're going to have to step up and make contributions early. But they're a 10-win team. As long as you've got number 9 and he stays healthy, you got a good shot to win 10 games every year, I think.
And Atlanta won it last year. They're not winning it this year. Nobody
Right.
ever repeats
Nobody
as
repeats,
champion
yeah.
as the NFC South, Torrance. But what do you think about this particular division?
Well, I look right now. I see Atlanta up at the top right now. Just looking at them on paper and looking at them from last year, I think their defense is going to suffer this year. They lost some key people on their defense, and I think we will exploit that. I see the Saints winning 10 games. Tampa, I don't see Tampa up there. I see Tampa dead last in this conference. I don't think Josh Freeman has what it takes to be a starting quarterback in this league.
I think Tampa's upgraded their secondary, Ricky, and we'll see if Revis is healthy. If he is, he's really good. If he's not, he's not. But I'm still not sold on Josh Freeman. Your thoughts on the NFC South?
Well, that's a pit boy, Reeves, so, I have to go along with him. But I tell you, I like the Saints being first. Atlanta got a good team. We know that. They building, offense down there. They got a lot of great players down there. But I think with the addition of Coach Payton coming back, they're going to give us an extra 3 or 4 wins right there. So I'm like Brian. I think we can get 10 wins out of this and make the playoffs.
Well, you look at the Saints' schedule, guys, and you look at the first 4 weeks of the season. I think it pretty much tells a story for you because I do think this first game is a swing game. If you win the first game, I believe you'll be at least 3-1, if not 4-0. If you lose the first game, then you're looking at 2-2 or less, Brian. I think that's why this game carries so much significance. And if you want to be a playoff team, if you want to be a division champion, you've got to win at home against your biggest rival, regardless of when you play them, especially on opening day.
Yeah, you know what? When you break the schedule down into 4 quarters, which is what we all like to do, they have to finish 3-1 out of this. 4-0 would be great. 2-2 would tell you a lot about this team.
Yeah, but the one thing coaches always, I've played on several different teams, and the one thing that we always stress on those different teams I played on was win your division. That's the most important thing, win your division. This first game is a division game, so win your division.
Right, you're always trying to win at home, basically. You get 8 wins at home. That was always my thing. 8 games we should win at home, and still as a couple on the road, we'll be in great shape. And that's most football players. They always want to win at home.
Week 1, of course, produces not just the Saints and Falcons as a big game, but some other key games around the league to watch for as well. Let's take a look at some of those Week 1 matchups. Ravens and Broncos, doesn't get much better than that. This is the one that got away in Denver last year, and they're mad about the big picture of Joe Flacco hanging on their stadium. Of course, the Buccaneers and the Jets, not so much because these are great teams, but Revis returning, of course, to face his former team, and we'll see what the Bucs can offer. The Packers and the 49ers, rematch of a playoff game last year, dominated by the Niners. The Eagles and Redskins, the Monday night game in the East. Who's the contender? Who's the pretender? Any of those matchups, Brian, that stick out in your mind?
Well, I love the Thursday night opener, the rematch of that divisional game last year. The Broncos are coming in with a couple of key injuries on defense, so we'll see if there's that Super Bowl hangover from the Ravens that they talk about every year.
Yeah. Well, my take on this is Eagles and the Redskins. That's the one I want to see. You got RG3 coming back. You got Michael Vick starting. Hey, some fireworks at the quarterback position. Hopefully you get a lot of points out of this game because the Eagles force their defense I don't think will hold up. I do think the Redskins will win that game.
Well, mine would be the 49ers and Green Bay. I really like the 49ers defense. I like all the speed that the young linebackers have. I mean, I kind of rate them along with our linebacker core. So just to go against a great quarterback and Roger like they finna go, you're going to see right off the bat a great offense against a great defense.
And a point of reference, when Ricky says our linebacking core, he's talking about the Dome Patrol, okay? Just want to clarify that. All right, guys, I think you all would concur with me. The NFC is simply much deeper. I've got as many as 7 teams that can win it all in the NFC: Green Bay, Atlanta, Minnesota, San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, and I'd include the Saints in that mix. Whereas in the AFC, I'm hard-pressed to find contenders. Denver, Baltimore, Cincinnati, New England. With the exception of Cincinnati, I'd say that the other 3 are not as good as they were last year, Brian.
Yeah, I'd add Houston to that mix too,
Maybe
Kenny.
so.
But
Maybe
you're
so,
right.
yeah.
The power shift has taken place in the last 2 or 3 years, to be perfectly honest.
Yes.
Well, I mean, when it comes to those guys getting draft picks, I mean, you know, the more games you lose, the better your draft picks. So a lot of those guys being last place, they're kind of moving up because they're getting a lot of great young talent up there first, and it kind of really helping their team out.
I think he made a great point right there. I think that's a great point, guys, because if you look at it over the years, a lot of young guys been coming in playing right now.
Right.
Guys are not sitting, especially in the quarterback position, which is one of the toughest positions to come in and play immediately. But we got young guys coming in and playing right now. You're getting running backs from out of nowhere, nobody know about, are playing right now, offensive linemen. So I think that was a great point that you made. Young guys are coming in and playing right now, and then they're helping these teams out that are getting the high draft picks because they didn't have a great year.
Ravens won it last year. They don't have Bolden. They don't have Reed. They don't have Ray Lewis anymore. Doomerville's gone from Denver, and of course Von Miller's suspended, so they're not as good, obviously, going in. New England, I think this might be the year it catches up with them, frankly, Brian, with all the losses they've sustained.
Yeah, and I think, can I say one thing about the
Quickly.
NFC South is the 4 quarterbacks. I know that teams rely heavily on their starting quarterback, and the better that person is, the farther they're going to go. But I'll tell you what, Freeman, all the guys in the NFC South, they all have the potential to be really good players.
When we return in just a moment, it's our Hot Seat segment, all about college football uniforms. You won't want to miss it as we continue. It's SportsNOLA TV from Toyota of New Orleans here on WHNO Channel 20. Our SportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening, all about turnover on the roster. How many members of the Saints' 53-man roster were not with the Saints when Sean Payton last coached a game in January of 2012? Is it A20, B25, C30, or D35? If you guessed 25, you are correct. Only 28 players on this roster were on the roster with Sean Payton's Saints in the 2011 season, so that is significant turnover from a year ago. Goes without saying. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA TV, Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. Glad you've joined us. Thanks to Troy Duhon and Premier Automotive for having you here this evening. We're so pleased to be here. It's time now for our Hot Seat segment. You've seen this every year, and our Hot Seat segment is brought to you by Pride Services Air Conditioning and Heating. At Pride Services, we'll fix it right today. Be here tomorrow. Since 1984, Pride Services AC and Heating. Our hot seat topic of the day. Are diverse uniforms good or bad for college football? Should players decide or drive apparel? And should corporate entities be allowed to partner with schools and pay for them to wear uniforms? As we look at Tulane and their opening season game against Jackson State and the uniforms that they wore. Brian Allee-Walsh, the floor is yours.
Kenny, all I can say is this. Tulane, when they play home in the Dome, they better hope that they don't have a power outage, because you're not going to be able to tell who's on the field for Tulane. I've got 2 thoughts about the uniforms. One is it doesn't represent Tulane, okay? And then 2 is, as long as Curtis Johnson keeps winning, they can wear anything they want to, as far as I'm concerned. It's when they start losing, and they will this year. They're still a young football team. But for some reasons, they didn't run this past the clearance house on what kind of uniforms to get for Tulane. You can't pick up those numbers well from the press box, maybe from the far reaches of the Superdome. Let's hope they can do a better job when they move into their new stadium. For now, though, I would give this a big thumbs down in the uniform.
Oh, man. Yeah, it figures. Old guy, stuck in his ways, don't like change. That's what you get for the elderly. But I tell you, I love the new uniforms. Now, I think Tulane could have put some white in the uniform to help out with the numbers so you can recognize the numbers. But the change of uniforms, helmets, and socks, and all those things, I love it. It gets the kids excited, gets the fans excited, getting people to buy more apparel. But with that, so we don't have the Johnny football situation, I think these schools should pay. If they're getting pay for these apparel to wear these uniforms and all, I think they need to give more to the student athlete as well, so they can have some of that revenue that they're taking. But uniforms, I love it. I think it makes the games exciting. The fans love it. The kids are loving it. You have kids who want to go to school because of a uniform. Can you believe that? Kids want to go to school because of a uniform, because they agreed to change. Can you believe that?
I'll come back. It's Rickey's turn.
And I tell you what, I mean, just like Terrence said, I mean, as long as you can lighten the uniforms up, I mean, this is just the first game. So, I mean, you know, they gave you a first game show. I'm sure they got 4 or 5 more uniforms that they're going to show during the season. So, you know, the first one was, the game wasn't as big, so they kind of toned it down a little bit. But I'm sure as they go on during the year, Coach is going to have more uniforms, and they're going to have a lot more color into them.
Well, you know, you guys raised some good points, but the bottom line is this, is that, you know, make it visible to the fan, to the media, that they can make out who's playing down in the football field, and then, two, at least put a color in there that represents Tulane University. Last time I looked, gray does not represent Tulane University, all right? So that's one big issue right there. And then, two, I'm all for the young getting what they want and everything like that, but look, it's a distraction to me. I still say it's not what you look like, it's how you play the game. If they keep winning, it's a fine uniform. If not, junk it.
Right. That was a different kind of green. You're just not used to that, being old.
See, it's not what it looks like, it's what he can see. This gentleman does not wear glasses. He needs to wear glasses when he's watching Tulane.
What's that, Rickey?
These kids, look, understand. Before, you used to bring the kids to your school and you show them your stadium, you show them your locker room and all. Now these teams are showing these kids their uniforms. Look at all the different uniforms they have. Look at all the different helmets and all we wear. It's something that helps with recruiting now.
Like,
and if Tulane want to compete, they're going to need to recruit, and they're going to need new uniforms like they have.
Well, wait a minute. It starts with facilities. Okay, that'll help recruit. You're talking about a $250,000 scholarship that those kids at Tulane are getting. Forget about the uniforms. Improve the facilities and win-loss record and improve your recruiting, and that's how you get kids. Forget about uniforms.
We got a new stadium coming.
I know, I'm just saying, but you don't.
We got a new stadium coming.
Exactly. I know.
Right.
That's
So,
what I'm saying.
right
That's
there
good.
going to attract a lot of kids. So, I mean, we just need the local kids to stay home. Exactly. They can get the local kids to stay home. They can compete with all the big schools because we have a lot of great high school football talent around here.
It's time for
His
the
head under
judge
that, would you?
to render his verdict here. So much to talk about here. Number one, I heard the statement, fans excited. I haven't met one Tulane fan that was excited about this uniform yet. In fact, they hated it. They loathed it. And I haven't met one yet. If you're out there, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Number two, I'll name a few for you. Alabama, Texas, Florida State, LSU, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State. I don't know. They don't need these kind of gimmicks. Do they get kids to come to school because of what they wear? I don't think so, and they never will. From the standpoint of the uniforms that Tulane wore in this game, I have no problem with them wearing something different on a one-time basis, which I think this was, but I think the point that Brian made was extremely well taken, and that is very simply this. If your own fans sitting as close as possible on the plaza level can't even read the uniform numbers and don't know who the players are, then the old statement about you need a program to figure out the players is an axiom that doesn't even apply here, because even that won't help. You have no clue. Very poor design. If you would have accented the numbers or had a light accent or even a white number, maybe this would have worked. Look, I'm not an old fogey. I'm just being honest about things from this perspective. If you want to do something different on a one-time basis, I'm all for it. But in the process, you might want to let your fan base, aside from the media, know who your players are. Just saying, especially since it's your first game of the year. Ultimately, it's about what you do on the field. Whether you win or lose, that markets. A kid's not coming to your school because you wore a gray uniform. That isn't happening. And anyone that insinuates that simply has no clue about what they're talking about. No clue whatsoever. From this perspective, this was a failure. Couldn't read the numbers, didn't work, fans couldn't stand it. Get rid of them. Don't do it again, unless, of course, Nike pays you like, I don't know, a few $1 million. Are you listening, Phil Knight, in Oregon? Oregon, there's a good example for you. Maryland, good enough. You get my picture. Or maybe you don't. I don't want to get the picture. Back in just a moment on SportsNOLA TV here on WHNO, Channel 20. A traditional uniform worn by the LSU Tigers in Cowboy Stadium in Arlington, and tradition lives because winning continues for LSU as the Tigers beat TCU, a good football team, 37-27. It was a football game in which the Tigers really controlled play from the start. As we have a look at some of the highlights of this game that LSU did control from the start, and the Tigers really did it in all phases. Zach Mettenberger looked like a totally different player. Poised, made great decisions, made every throw. His wide receivers stepped up in a big way, and they won consecutively on many plays and continuously throughout the course of the game. His play fakes were good. The pass set up the run, Brian. I thought this was an outstanding offensive performance on balance from LSU, playing without their best offensive player in Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, for unveiling an offense under Cam Cameron, I'll tell you what, I give it a solid grade because Zach Mettenberger, one's got a pro arm. And then two, if you put him in great situations, and he's going to take advantage of that. And I thought they did a good job of mixing the pass and the run real well. So I give Cam, you can see that the influence heavily already.
Yeah, Torrance, they threw the ball down the field. They mixed the run and the pass beautifully. I thought Cameron called a really good game, but I really thought that the quarterback just looked like a different player from the guy we saw last year.
Totally different player. They let him go. They let him off the leash. They let him go. Let him make some mistakes. Let him learn. He has the talent out there to help him out. He doesn't have to go out there and do it by himself. He has great receivers. He has great running back. Let this kid go and let him play, and he can show you what he's capable of doing.
Ricky, they gave up a touchdown on a kickoff. They set him up with another score and a fumble by Blue. Their defense really, I thought, played pretty well. 27 points is a lie because they really only gave up 2 scores.
Yeah, and I tell you what, man, the most impressive thing was the offensive line. Those guys blocked well. I mean, they gave the quarterback plenty of time, and I think they got the best offensive line in college football myself.
Brian, when you give them that much time, and they did, their pass protection was outstanding. TCU got there on a couple of blitzes unaccounted for, but those were the running back's fault as much as anything. I thought the line did a good job.
2 things really noticed that stuck out for me, Kenny, is that they lose 8 starters off a defense. They yield under 300 yards, all right, and as you alluded to, the touchdowns, and then they had to go short yardage and won. And the secondly is that what I liked offensively is that they threw when they wanted to throw and not when they had to throw, like in a 3rd and long or 2nd and long. Cam Cameron will bring that pro style of influence to this offense, and I think he'll put Zach Mettenberger in much better situations.
Yeah, passing grade on all fronts to start things with. Good kick returns in this game as well. Although they did allow 1 kickoff return for a touchdown, they'll have to fix that. Meanwhile, in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, a game that you watched on WHNO Channel 20 on a tape-delay basis, Tulane took care of business against Jackson State, 34-7 final. And Torrance, this is what they should do against a non-Division I opponent, and they did what they were supposed to do in this game.
Yes, you will ask me this question against my fellow conference, the SWAC conference, that is. But yes, Tulane, they're supposed to win the game and win it big, and that's what they've done. Maybe they need to keep the uniforms. They won with the uniforms on. Maybe we should keep them.
Hey, that's what Brian said. Ricky, from the standpoint of, again, when you're expected to beat a team, sometimes there's a little bit of pressure there, but they took care of business. They got on top early and stayed on top.
Yeah, and I tell you what, they got Joe Montana's son out there quarterbacking, so that was just great looking at his son out there and seeing Joe out there, watching his son.
Brian, the negative, they only had about 300 yards total offense. You would think they'd produce more than that. You'd like to think they were holding back a little bit against this opponent, not to show everything that they had.
Yeah, I like the fact that Curtis ran the ball a lot. I think nearly 50 times, if my memory serves me correctly. That's good. You need to establish a presence up front, and they try to do that against an inferior opponent. And then they get 6 turnovers too, Kenny, so that really helps.
Well, it did. They nearly pitched a shutout, gave up 7 points. Their defense bent but didn't break, had some trouble getting off the field on third downs, but they did a good job overall, and that's a positive start. And with South Alabama coming up, Torrance, a team that lost on opening week, they have a chance to be 2-0.
Yes, they have a great opportunity to get 2 wins under the belt, and what be great for CJ to get this as a new head coach and going into the season.
And trying to create some interest and some vibe, getting it going in their final year in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Ricky, a good thing to have a stadium on campus next year?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, a lot of people gave them a whole lot of money, and a lot of people, you know, want them to do good over there. And I'm one of the guys that, you know, I go and check Curtis out. I like him. I think that, you know, he's one of the great young coaches that's coming around. And I think if we do enough good work at Tulane, he can get back in the NFL one day.
Did you give him any money, though?
Did you give him
any money?
I had to.
It was fun.
We love NFL and the Saints. We love LSU, Tulane, and college football, but we also love prep football at sportsNOLA.com and here on SportsNOLA TV. And so does First NBC Bank, as we're back with our second year of the First NBC Bank Prep Showcase, and that will include 8 football telecasts here on WHNO Channel 20. And it all starts this Saturday. Big rivalry in Bayou Country, Vanderbilt Catholic and E.D. White. That is going to be shown at noon here on WHNO. And then a big matchup between the defending national champs, John Curtis, and a very good East St. John team. De La Salle with us this year against Thomas Jefferson. Carver and Newman last year, they combined for 140 points. The oldest rivalry in the state, Jesuit Holy Cross. Holy Cross, Brother Martin and Goodwood. St. Augustine and Rummel. You talk about a blockbuster. There it is. And Jesuit, Brother Martin, Brian, it's a heck of a schedule. We look forward to it.
Absolutely. I tell you, I'm glad you brought that up about Carver Newman. I remember driving down the interstate and seeing the scoreboard light up over Pan American, I believe. It was incredible last year. A lot of points.
And I tell you what, I go see St. Aug because I like the running back they got over there, and I mean, I don't know where he's going to go at, but
he's not going to Tulane, and that's the kind of kid that they need to get. That's the kind of kid. Forget about the uniforms.
You can't say he's not going to Tulane.
Yes, how are you going to say that? You can't do that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of kid that they need.
Say that.
Absolutely.
They're trying to compete
push
for
the
him,
kid
man.
off.
No push
They
him
need
over.
an identifiable player
Right.
that they can hang their hats on. Well, there's a lot of really good teams in Louisiana to hang your hats on, and our SportsNOLA.com top 10s we have out at SportsNOLA.com. And you look at 5A, we look at our top 5 teams in the poll, and this is including select and non-select schools in every class. Rummel, and we put the defending champions on top in every class because they deserve it until someone proves otherwise. Rummel, Barb, St. Augustine, West Monroe, Parkway. And 4A, Carr and Neville, boy, both of them look unreal again. Bastrop looked great in the Jamboree. St. Thomas More, really good. And look out for McDonough 35, extremely talented. John Curtis, who else? Parkview Baptist, another defending champion. University's outstanding. Evangeline Burley's really good. Calvary Baptist, Winfield, flip it either way in 2A. Catholic New Iberia is potent. Newman and Riverside area teams that are very good. And then in 1A, Washita Christian, of course, the defending champion, West St. John, Haynesville, Kentwood, Vermilion Catholic. Some tremendous high school football to be played in Louisiana. Follow it at sportsnola.com where we have everything you could ever want on a day-to-day basis at sportsnola.com on Prep Sports. Ricky, Torrance, Brian, it's great to have you guys back. Thank you. We'll do it again next week. It's great to have you on board, Rick. Bless you, man. Be good.
It was fun.
When we return in just a moment, we'll talk about Toyota New Orleans and Premier Automotive Dealerships with our good friend, Brad. Stay with us here on WHNO Channel 20. Lunch was provided today by TGI Fridays. In here, it's always Friday. 2 locations in Metairie and on the West Bank. Today we had Jack Daniel's ribs, and they were great. Thanks to TGI Fridays and Bonnie Bouvier for their support. And, of course, we want to thank our sponsor today, Toyota New Orleans, out of the Premier Automotive Group. Toyota New Orleans, located on the I-10 service road just off of Bullard in New Orleans East. A fantastic, proven, quality product. Great dealership. 940-40 to call Toyota of New Orleans. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA TV. Glad you've joined us here at Toyota of New Orleans. And I'm joined by Harold Boyd, a senior sales consultant here for Toyota of New Orleans. Harold, thanks for having us here today. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as far as Toyota of New Orleans is concerned, of course, we're approaching the end of this year, 2013. Still some good deals on the lot. And, of course, the 2014 fleet is in for the most part, isn't it?
Absolutely. We have the all-new designed Toyota Tundra, new for 2014. We also have the all-new design 2014 Corolla. Real sleek vehicle, real eye-catching. The Tundra has changed overall inside and outside. Also, with those vehicles, we still have the 3-year maintenance free maintenance for 3 years. Also, we do have a lifetime powertrain warranty on all our new vehicles.
Camry is a proven product. The hybrid has done well for you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. The hybrid has a Prius and Camry. Also, of the couple of ones we have is probably the Highlander and the Camry.
And of course, the technology continues to improve with the hybrid. People think, oh, I got to plug something in and charge it all the time. That isn't the case anymore.
No, it's user-friendly. It's just you drive and go, and it automatically charges up the battery. It's not anything you have to plug and worry about an outlet. It's all gas, and the gas charges the electric.
This dealership was ahead of the curve, got open very quickly after Katrina, and is a staple in this community.
Absolutely. I was one of the people that came back. I remember we were just us, and the Home Depot was the only thing that was on the block. It took a while, but we back strong like we was before.
Harold, thanks for having us here. Keep up the great work at Torrance New Orleans.
All right, Kenny, thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of SportsNOLA TV. It's great to be back. Thanks for joining us this evening. For Brian, Torrance, Ricky, and the crew, I'm Ken Trahan. God bless you one and all. Rounding third and heading home. So long.